Hello and welcome back to Chapter 11, Speech Anxiety, Part 2. Previously, we've been discussing what public speaking anxiety is and how it's like communication apprehension, some of the different types of anxiety, and then ways that we have this anxiety physiologically and psychologically. Now we're going to be discussing what are the reasons why we have this anxiety and also ways to overcome it. So we start with reasons. Reasons why. Some of the reasons we engage in we have communication apprehension is first due to a lack of speaking experience. We just don't have enough experience to be able to engage in it confidently. How do we avoid this? By gaining more experience. This also can translate to other communication situations. If we do not have enough experience in interviews, we get better at it by having more interviews. We maybe have anxiety meeting new people. How do we reduce anxiety about that? By meeting new people. So it's very easy to avoid this sort of issue. It just takes the courage to be able to engage in it. Also, you can have a negative prior experience and therefore assume that other experiences in the future will be negative. In fact, this is even more compounded by our negativity bias. We tend to be Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive experiences. I always remember back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I did a little bit of theater in high school. People would say, James, you did a great job. And I'm like, thanks. I felt awkward because I wasn't really able to accept that. But every time that I didn't do well, I still remember them incredibly vividly. So, how do we compensate for these negative experiences? Scholarship says to overcome one negative experience, you need 3 positive experiences. So, it's about finding more times to create these positive experiences, and when you have negative experiences, to try to reframe them to make them more positive. That they are about the process of improvement, not about I did bad, which is not productive. We also can have low self-esteem. How does this develop? This can develop simply through lack of experience and prior negative experiences. So we can overcome this by having more experiences, and we can even have a self-fulfilling prophecy. A self-fulfilling prophecy is a very common reason why we experience communication apprehension. We have a negative attitude towards something. Let's say public speaking. I don't think I will do well. That attitude then leads to behavior. The behavior being, well, if I'm not going to do well anyway, why should I practice? And as a result, that then leads to an outcome. The outcome being obviously negative, but that reinforces that initial attitude. The prophecy has been fulfilled. This also happens in other communication situations. Let's say I think I am not good at meeting new people. So, don't feel I'm good at it. Therefore, what is the behavior that comes from that attitude? Maybe I'm not going to put myself out there as much as someone else might. And as a result, I then am not able to meet new people. Therefore, that reinforces that initial attitude. I guess I'm not good at meeting new people because I have not met new people. So, we have to be able to check our attitudes to make sure that we are not falling into this self-fulfilling prophecy, or at least this negative self-fulfilling prophecy. There are positive ones that we can engage with. I know I'm going to do well. I know that I can improve at public speaking. That leads to behavior of practicing, about asking questions, and that leads to an outcome, usually positive. There are other reasons. A fear of being the center of attention. This can develop by just lack of experience at being the center of attention. Again, this is the common thread that learning is a process, and it is not that, and it is something that you will have challenges and successes, but anyway, you are always going to be improving, or whatever the outcome, you're always going to be improving. We also have concern about being judged by the audience. That is a common one, but as I said on the very first day, no one brings tomatoes. No one wants to see you fail. In fact, people are more likely to want to see you succeed because they've already identified with you. They've seen a little bit of themselves in you, and since they don't want to see themselves fail, they also do not want to see yourself fail. We also have feelings of being subordinate. This happens due to a feeling of power distance, that this person is more powerful than me, and therefore have an apprehension about that communication situation. So, what we should strive for is to understand that we are as good as everyone else. And not just that, we have diverse perspectives that can help benefit both people. So even if you are employee, they are manager, you are student, they are professor, feeling subordinate, number one, diminishes our ability to communicate, but also it is not really warranted because we both have situations to gain from this communication. And then an excessive self-focus. Basketball players, what are they thinking about as they're shooting? Absolutely nothing. When they are excessively focused with every single thing that they're doing, guess what? They end up missing. They end up missing a dribble or or picking up the ball, stuff like that. Silly mistakes. So we want to be sure that we are not focusing too much on ourselves. What should we focus on instead? The message. Public speaking emulates the best qualities of everyday communication. So just focus on the message instead of the other stuff. The other stuff will come with practice. Some others? High stakes. But we tend to create these huge stakes for communication situations. Give you an example. Meeting someone new. We may feel anxious about that. What are the stakes? What is the worst thing that could happen? They don't want to meet you. Okay, you didn't have a relationship with them before, you don't have a relationship with them now. Let's do it with this class. What is the worst thing that can happen when you don't do well on a public speech? You get feedback. You maybe don't get super good of a grade, but especially for the first speech, the personal artifact speech, it's only 15 points. So, while yes, we should always strive for success, we also have to manage our stakes. And a lot of times we tend to catastrophize of this is going to be the worst thing in the world. We also feel different from the audience. Perceived differences in sex, class, interest can lead to some anxiety as well. A good example of this is that in my interpersonal communication classes, I do talk about gender differences, and I talk about how there are differences between the ways men and women communicate. And I feel awkward about that. I feel anxious about that because I do not want to create or offend anyone. That being said, that anxiety doesn't really help the situation. In fact, it probably makes it more likely that I do offend someone. So I strive to be as inclusive as possible throughout that lecture, throughout that conversation, but I don't get it. I try not to get anxious about it, and I try to understand that we are all alike regardless of our gender, but there are some measurable and statistically significant differences between how genders communicate. And then there's a degree of unpredictability. Uncertainty. We fear uncertainty, so this is another situation of that because we don't know how this communication situation is going to, what the outcome is going to be. So, how do we reduce it? Through practice. But one of the biggest ones is failure, a fear of failure. And as we've stated before, we are always going to be on a learning curve. And whether we fail or succeed, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things as long as we try our best. Because someone can succeed and yet not really learn anything from the situation. But there also could be someone who failed who learned a great deal from this situation. So we are constantly on the on the path to improvement, the path to growth. And it is not that I succeed, I fail, I succeed, I fail, I succeed, I fail. Instead, it is more like I succeed, I fail, I succeed, I fail, I succeed, I fail, I succeed, I fail, I succeed, I fail. And all of that is on the path to improvement. The biggest way that we can fail is by not engaging at all or not putting in our best effort because that diminishes our ability to improve. Not to mention, a lot of the greatest insights of life come from times that we have failed. So now we're going to move on to how do we solve this. There's two ways, one of which is logically. We can logically break down and cognitively restructure our fear. Identifying objectively what we think about a certain situation. For example, I am not good at public speaking. I know people will judge me. I know that I'm not prepared. Then you identify inconsistencies between perception and reality. Let's take the fear of judgment one. Some inconsistencies are that, has anyone judged me up to this point? They are identifying with me. I have a few friends or at least acquaintances in the class already. They don't want to see me fail. They aren't going to judge me. So my perception doesn't really match reality. Then I replace that destructive thinking, they are judging me, with some productive or supportive thinking. They want me to see me succeed. They've said so. So by logically breaking it down, you can start reframing or rethinking about your fear and turning it from a negative into a positive, just through how we think about it. This one's a little bit more challenging though, because fear is emotional. But we can logically break down some of the reasons why we shouldn't be fearful, and as a result, we will be able to improve. A good example of this is meeting new people. Oh, they're going to laugh at me. They're going to judge me. Then I take that and I say, well, yeah, they might judge me, but also what's the alternative? We aren't going to have a relationship if I don't engage with them. And I replace that destructive with constructive. It is essential to have this. And as a result, we have a positive cycle instead of a negative cycle. We also have some more strategies for building confidence. We should always prepare well. Visualize success. This may mean going into the actual room and practicing in that situation and visualizing success instead of failure. Also, avoid gimmicks. This is an important one. Things like imagining the audience in their underwear is not really a way to improve your public speaking or reduce your anxiety. Also, breathe and release. That is one of the best ways because as you breathe, you start relaxing. Also, minimize what you memorize. The way that we are going to be memorizing in this class is through extemporaneous memorization instead of word for word memorization. Word for word memorization is challenging and is going to take a lot of time. It is first line. How does the first line connect to the second line? Say it a few times. Okay, now the second line. How does the second line connect to the third line? Okay, now say it a few times. Now try to say the whole thing. Okay, now I got it. Okay, now I've made the mental connection. Now on to the fourth. And it goes on like that over and over and over again. Whereas extemporaneous, it's memorizing the general idea of what you want to say and then just communicating that. That is a better way to minimize what you memorize. Also, practice out loud because you are going to end up realizing, oh, the words that I wrote are not actually going to be, or aren't going to be as well communicated as if I just said what I meant. So you're going to start finding those content areas of improvement, but also those delivery areas of improvement because you'll be able to get your mouth around the words and be able to then communicate your ideas more effectively. And then also customize your practice. This means, trying new things. And the last part, ways to build confidence during the speech. This is acknowledging that you're experiencing some level of fear. By understanding that and acknowledging it, it is no big shock that you are experiencing fear. Instead, it is something that you have already predicted and know is going to happen. Because, as we've said, fear is just something that will happen. And you can experience high levels of fear, you can experience low levels of fear, but either way, you can still give a great public speech. Also engage in positive self-talk. Say, oh, you can do this. You're awesome. You're going to do great instead of you're horrible, you're bad, you're not going to do great. Also breathe. Breathing again. Physical and psychological are interconnected. So, taking those physiological steps, sleeping, eating breakfast, going on a run or exercising every now and again are going to improve your mental capacity as well. Also, don't apologize for being nervous. You're going to be nervous, and that is okay. And then lastly, after the speech, evaluate your performance. This is vital because it reinforces in your mind that you are on a learning curve. And no matter how well you do or how poorly you do, you moderate your perspective of your skill and find ways to consistently improve instead of saying, I'm great, I don't need to work on it, or I'm bad, so what's the point of working on it? And that concludes this chapter. Have a lovely rest of your day. I will see you next time.